Yesterday, Sayadaw said in his discourse that knowing the truth of mind and body as separately, such as discernment of the mind and body, that is knowing the truth of mind and body, and then knowing the truth of conditionality, being able to discern the linkage of cause and effect, one comes to realize this knowledge of conditionality. And because one observes the arising and passing away of psychophysical phenomena, one comes to realize the truth of impermanence, arising and passing away. Because one sees the mind and body as impermanent, one comes to realize the impermanent nature of all things. Because one observes the unsatisfactoriness and selflessness or soullessness of mind and body, one comes to realize the truth of unsatisfactoriness and selflessness, soullessness. In this way, knowing the truth is known as Samadhi, the right view or right understanding. So in order to see this truth, observe this truth, one inclines one's mind towards that object, and such is Sammasankappa, the right aim, taking an aim or training one's mind on the object of meditation. Today, we shall continue to discuss this subject because the Buddha himself has asserted or confirmed or declared that only in this teaching is there the practice of the Eightfold Path, and also in this teaching only there are the Samanas who possess true knowledge. Samanas being kilesa extinguishers who possess true knowledge in many ways. And he has given this definite declaration, definite assertion. So we have to digest this subject from every angle, namely this Eightfold Path, both from the theoretical and practical aspects. Since the Buddha has given this assurance as regards the practice and the result of the practice of the Eightfold Path, we have to explain it from a theoretical aspect and has to put it to test with our own practical experience. Hence, we have to explain it from every angle repeatedly. As for the Vipassana yogi, insight meditator, he or she notes every object arising at the six sense doors, whatever arises. They can be divided into elements, base elements, striker element, ignition element. Every time one pays attention or exert energy to note every arising object, any object arising through the six sense doors, they are made up of these three elements. Thus here to bring out a moral, when Sayadaw is speaking, yogis are hearing his voice, and the ear which is hearing the voice, there's the ear which is a base element, which is struck by the sound waves, which are striker element. And then as a result of striker element impinging the ear door, there comes about, or it brings about, the ignition element in the form of hearing consciousness, contact and feeling. So if you try to analyze these elements, they are none other than materiality and mentality, Miya, Rupa and Dhamma. So you have the ear which hears the voice. There's the ear sensitivity, sensitive part of the ear. It is just like a receiver in a radio or television. Is mere element. There's no such thing as person, being, individual, man, woman, you, I, he, she. So one has accepted as such. And then there is this is just a base element. It bears its own character. Hence, this is called Dhatu element. Mere element. There's no such thing as person, being, individual, man, woman, he, she, you, I. And then about the sound waves which issue from his mouth and strikes your ear element, ear sensitivity. This is another element, another dhatu. The mere sound waves. And when you analyze it, there's no such thing as person, being, individual, man, woman, you, or you, he, she, I. It is quite correct. It's just the sound waves which you heard, which you hear. And this gives rise to hearing consciousness. As the sound impinges the eardrum, and when the thing comes into contact, there arises this hearing consciousness. And then, as a result of hearing consciousness, there can be feeling, good or bad or neutral. Such things are via upekha. But in Sugata method, the conventional discourses, it is given as three things. That is good, bad and neutral. And then out of these three things, the first two things are very obvious, namely good and bad feeling. So it is like good and bad feeling, which are the ignition, part of the ignition element. When you strike a match, there arises the flame. You produce a flame. There is this base element in a form of matchbox. The phosphorus or whatever is in the matchbox, and the nitrate or something, some chemical in the matchstick, which is striker element. When you strike this matchstick, you strike the matchbox with a matchstick, there's produced a flame, which is an ignition element. And they're just elements only. So these elements comes into the ear door. Same, just like these elements enter the nose door, tongue door, body door, and manodvara, the heart door, the door of the mind, the seat of the mind. And all these elements are mind and body, just mind and body. They are the true nature. And you are seeing, observing the true nature of things at the moment of mindfulness with the practice of Satipatthana by way of mindfulness. As noting as hearing, seeing, tasting, touching, and so on. But when you are noting, you have to apply this noting mind and mindfulness with full force. So you come to observe the truth by way of these three elements, base element, striker element, ignition element. Every time you note these objects as they arise through the six sense doors. Every time you note, you see the truth. In order to see the truth, you apply your mindfulness. You exert energy in order to be able to connect with the object of attention. And then in order to connect steadfastly on the object, you need this full force, application of full force, energy, exertion of energy. And in terms of the textual expression, we call it Samma Vayama, making the path of right energy or effort. And as much as you exert your energy, you are bound to activate your mindfulness. Such is Samma Sati, making the path of right mindfulness. And as you activate your mindfulness, concentration grows, builds. And such is Samma Samadhi, making the path of right concentration. So in this way, you have these three constituents, namely Samma Vayama, right energy, Samma Sati, right mindfulness, and Samma Samadhi, right concentration, which make up, these three making up, the three parts of constituents, make up the Samadhi, making up the path of concentration path, or it's also called Samadhi Khanda, concentration group, or Samadhi Sikha, the concentration training, or Samadhi Sasana, concentration teaching. So you exert your energy. As much as you exert your energy, pay attention, you are bound to connect your noting mind with the object in a steadfast manner. As much as you are able to activate steadfast mindfulness, there will be this concentration which will grow, which will develop every time you note. And these three constituents of concentration path are involved. In order to realize the truth, you got to aim or train your mind on the object. And this, the element, the force of training also is, aiming also is involved, such as Sammasankappa Megha, the path of right aim. And knowing the truth is the truth that is known is Samadhi Megha, the path of right view or understanding. So you know one of these elements, either base element, striker element, or ignition element. Of course, when you're noting as a whole, one whole thing, or just one thing like hearing, seeing, tasting, touching, and so on. Not to note as base element or striker element or ignition element. You note it as a whole, the whole thing as one. So whatever your concentration falls, noting mind falls, you are not bound to know the object. At times, you may be observing the ear sensitivity as being a base element when you are hearing something. Or my ear is my ear which is hearing. Then you will know that by noting as when you note as hearing. And at times you may be observing the sound when you are noting hearing, because you are paying attention. Your noting mind falls on this object, namely the sound, the striker element. And at times you will be noticing the hearing consciousness as you are noting as hearing, as ignition element. And also at times you will be noticing the contact between the mind and the sound, and then the feeling good or bad. This is a pleasant sound. This is an unpleasant sound. In this way you will be able to observe. You will observe one of these things, not all at once with one noting mind. So this such knowledge or knowing is known as Samadhi Megha, the path of right view or right understanding. These two things constitute Panya Megha, the wisdom path, or Panya Khanda, wisdom group, or Panya Sikha, wisdom training, or Panya Sasana, wisdom teaching. These two Panya Megha, two constituents of Panya Megha, and three constituents of Samadhi Megha, concentration path, make up 5 Panchankika, 5 path of 5 group. All they are known as Karaka Megha. These 5 things work as a whole in not accepting kilesas and abandoning, overcoming kilesas by not accepting them, so that the mind is protected from kilesas, so that kilesas will not enter one's stream of consciousness. And also they function as consolidating one's mind on one object, so that the mind will not overshoot the mind. And that's also the aiming or training involved, so that the mind will not overshoot the object, will not miss the object, will not go on a tangent. So that one will know the truth instead of knowing the wrong thing. So each quality, they perform these qualities separately, such as Panchankika. And every time one notes, they are performing such functions. These 5 constituents of Karaka and Megha, the working group, you might call it, it's like very much like the office staff in the department. With various departments, when a case is put up, it has got to go through many departments, many concerned departments, which has to take action on this case until it gets to the top, to the head of department or responsible officer, who will sign and seal. Of course, the officer, the responsible officer, head of department, will not sign and seal a blank paper unless the case has been completed and approved by the department's concerned, subordinates concerned. course, maybe sometimes the officer may sign a blank sheet because he or she has got to go somewhere, and in case of emergency, things happen, but this is very exceptional. But in the realm of Dhamma, one has got to practice this Karaka Mekinga, the working group, Panchikika Mekinga, so as to keep everything ready for the officer to sign and seal, to cultivate insight knowledge, and to progress along the successive stages of insight until one realizes the maturity of liberating wisdom, beginning with the discernment of mind and body. And in this way, one accomplishes the purpose as regards the subordinate purpose, which has to be done by the subordinate staff until one reaches the ultimate cessation, seeing the Nibbana out of ultimate cessation with the path and fruition knowledge of the noble ones. And such is realizing the path consciousness after the Karaka Mekinga has completed the work. So only when it is completed, the officer will sign and seal, but not otherwise. In a sense, the subordinate department, the staff has got to work and complete it and approve it. Then only the officer will be sealed. Then will it become official. Excuse me. So, in order to do that, it has to be completed at the bottom, in the lower staff. Then only there will be the sign and seal by the head of department. So, in order to do that, the yogi has got to work like the office staff, without rest, continuously, except the time when they are fast asleep, practicing mindfulness every second of the time, exerting energy, cultivating or intensifying concentration, and then also one has got to train one's mind on the object, so to be concurrent. In this way, one has got to practice Panchangika Mekinga, the Karaka group Mekinga. So such is the work to be done by this Karaka Mekinga, the working group. So when we take into account these three constituents of Sila Mekinga, the morality path, which is made up of Samma Vacha, the right speech, Samma Kammata, the right action, and Samma Ajiva, right livelihood. These things are fulfilled. You are fulfilled with these three things, Sila Mekinga, prior to the practice. And of course, you have taken the vows of practice, so you are fulfilled with this morality. And in the course of the practice also, you are sustaining it, and you will be more purifying it with the practice. So there's no occasion for breaking it, or modeling it, or weakening it. So if you add these three constituents of morality path, Sila Mekinga, every time you activate your mindfulness, the eight constituents of insight path are involved. It's quite obvious. And you are developing it, enhancing it, multiplying it, and prospering it. So that if you take into account the time factor, with 60 minutes, 60 seconds, 1 minute, at the rate of 1 second development of Eightfold Path. In 1 minute, you are developing 60 times of this Eightfold Path. In 5 minutes, 300 times. In 1 hour, 3,600 times. You are developing it, prospering it, multiplying it, enhancing it. Such a practice is known as bhavana, mind development practice. So, when you are developing this, the wholesome mental states, bhavana, it is in accordance with the Buddha's definite, bold assertion that only in this teaching there is this practice of the Eightfold Path. And you can try to compare it with your own personal experience. And if you are able to complete or practice this Karaka Mekinga or insight path, you are bound to overcome these three categories of impurities, namely gross forms of impurities, the medium form and the refined form. But of course not eradicating to the point of no uprooting it as yet. It only happens at the moment of the practice of a full path on a part-time basis, Tatanga, momentary, part-time basis. Only when you are able to build up momentum in the course of the practice, you will be distancing these impurities, Vikamana, which is called, as it is called. And this is extinguishing the kilesas, samana, but not the samana of true knowledge, not the true samana. Only when you become when you attain as Arya, noble ones, will you become the true samana, the true extinguisher of kilesas. So in order to realize, to become a true samana, you are practicing as a forerunner practice, build up this practice a full path, overcoming and weakening and undermining these gross, medium and fine forms of impurities. It is quite obvious. So, hence the expression that only in this dispensation there are these kilesa extinguishers, those individuals who can overcome kilesas. This is in accordance with the assertions of the theory. So in order to practice this insight path, the Vipassana making up, and to realize, one has got to step up to the attainment of Ariya Mega, the path consciousness. First of all, you have to be fulfilled with the Mula, making up what is known as the fundamental or basic path. Namely, there are three things. One is Kamma Sakara Samadhi, right view of Kamma and Kamma result. That Kamma, one should believe in one's own Kamma as one's own property. One must believe in it and one must understand it. And then also one must have possessed, or one must have taken the vows or precepts, as already described, the three constituents of morality. Then cultivate these practice three constituents of samadhi, making up the concentration path. The three constituents of samadhi, and namely the Apana Samadhi, Upachara Samadhi, and Kanika Samadhi. In this way, you have to possess these three kinds of three constituents of Mula, making up the basic path as a fundamental, laying the foundation for the practice. And one must have faith in the Kamma and Kamma result, that Kamma is one's own property. Whatever you do is your destiny. Only then will you be able to undertake the practice of insight, Vipassana. And then you'll be able to note all the elements which arise through the six sense doors. All these things are sabhava, individual characteristics, which can give rise to insight knowledge, Vipassana jnana. From thence to realize, one can realize the path of fruition knowledge of the noble ones. So one must possess such faith and confidence to start off with. So we have these, first of all, the phenomenal right view, the right view of understanding this Kamma and Kamma results. That is the first thing. And then the purity of moral conduct, Sila making up. And then the cultivation of Kanika Samadhi, which has the same quality as the Upachara Samadhi. And one can, by this one can cultivate, one can develop this insight knowledge. So there's these three things, namely Kamma Sakara Samadhi, the fundamental right view of Kamma and Kamma result, the three constituents of morality path, and the concentration. These three things are known as Vipassana, Mula Magga, the basic path, or fundamental path of insight. As has been discussed, that at the moment of activating of mindfulness, you are deepening this practice of insight, Vipassana Magga. Then one is bound to realize a path consciousness with the maturity of liberating wisdom. experiencing the ultimate cessation beyond the conditioned phenomena of arising and passing away, to realizing with path and fruition conscious of the noble ones. Such is completion of the task by when the Karaka Megha has done it. First of all, the preparation has to be completed by Karaka Megha, the working group. Then it will be ready for the responsible officer to sign and seal. So this is just like this signing and sealing. So too, the realization of past consciousness is like the signing and sealing of the responsible officer. So this the inside knowledge that you are cultivating is known as Bhava Megha, the preliminary path or forerunner path, forerunner precursor of the Ariya Megha, the noble path or attainment path, as a forerunner. So one has got to go by stages and stages. Such is known as Paṇḍitā Megha, the path which is to be developed. Hence this niyama, fixed law, the definite maxim, that there are these three paths, namely Mula Megha, the basic path, as we have discussed. Secondly, we have Bhava Megha, the preliminary path, the forerunner path. And then the final path, the third one, namely Ariya Megha, the noble path, the attainment path. So there are these three paths. And these three paths have got to be practiced by stages, systematically, until one comes to the maturity of that practice, deepen the practice, reaching the maturity. Especially the maturity of Bhava Megha, the forerunner or preliminary path, namely the inside knowledge, until one is able to realize path and fruition knowledge of the noble ones, experiencing this ultimate cessation beyond the conditioned phenomena, the arising and passing away of conditioned phenomena. So, hence the Buddha, the Venerable Master Sayadaw has given this maxim: one realizes Nibbana. In order to explain it again, to be more explicit, there are these three things, three groups, namely Kamma, Sakara, Samadhi, the knowledge of the right fundamental understanding of Kamma and Kamma result. And then the three constituents of morality group, Sila Megha, namely Samma Vacha, Samma Kammata, Samma Ajiva, the right speech, right action, and right livelihood. Then the concentration. In the case of jhana, individual who is practicing jhana, jhanic concentration, jhanic samadhi, or upachara samadhi, neighborhood concentration. And as for those who are not practicing jhana, just vipassana, it is kanika samadhi, which is on the same level as upachara samadhi, neighborhood concentration. So these three groups make up the basis, the basic path of vipassana, the basis of insight, known as Mula Megha. As for the insight vipassana kanika samadhi, momentary concentration of insight, this can be cultivated or practiced in the course of the practice of insight. One will be fulfilled with this kanika samadhi, momentary concentration. So every time one notes this every arising object, so that the noting mind is connected to the object steadfastly, and the concentration builds, the one is cultivating this vipassana kanika samadhi, the momentary concentration of insight. So, however, if one is not able to strengthen, one is not able to fulfill this vipassana kanika samadhi, insight, momentary concentration, one will not be able to discern mind and body even. Even one will not be able to cultivate this insight knowledge known as Namarupa Parishita Jnana, the knowledge of the discernment of mind and body. And only when one is able to build up this kanika samadhi, momentary concentration, and be free from the hindrances of progress, nivaranas, will one be able to progress along the successive stages of insight knowledge, beginning with Namarupa Parishita Jnana, the knowledge of the discernment of mind and body. Then one begins to cultivate this insight knowledge So one has got to be fulfilled at the beginning of the practice with this insight, Kanika Samadhi, momentary concentration, Vipassana Kanika Samadhi, to start off with. So all we have to do is just accumulate or strengthen, build up this momentary concentration in the course of our practice. If, however, we are not able to do that, instead there's gap in the practice, there is intermittent, the resting and not losing mindfulness, then one will not be able to purify one's mind. Chitta Visuddhi cannot happen, even so that one will not be able to progress along the successive stages of insight knowledge, such as discernment of mind and body, the discernment of conditionality, and progressing along the insight knowledge. So, if one is not able to do that, one shows that, as some yogis are doing, not being able to differentiate mind and body, that shows that their insight, momentary concentration is still weak. So what Sayadaw likes to urge all the yogis is, out of the 60 days retreat, have 2 more weeks left, and in these remaining days, may be able to cultivate this insight, Kanika Samadhi, so that they are continuous, and building it up. If you are able to build up suddenly, at a flash of a moment, you are bound to cultivate this insight knowledge in abundance, in a spectacular manner. So don't be disheartened. Just build up your energy and be encouraged with full courage. That's all. Yeah. Courage. That's all. Yeah. Courage. That's all.